All right, thanks for all attending. And this is this week's edition of OptionVue Essentials. My name is Ken Dole, and I'll be taking you through a little bit about BackTrader today. And just before we get started, a little bit about my background. I've been a retail broker back in 04 to 08 period. Currently a Discover Options mentoring coach and also a trader. And I'm also helping out OptionVue clients as support. So quite a varied amount of duties. And I'm also trading in the midst of all this. And trading is my passion, of course. And another interesting day in the markets today. It's quite a battle going on between the bears and the bulls. Hard to say who's going to take this round here, but I'm leaning a little bit bearish just because of the seasonality. The sell in May and go away rule seems to be in play at the moment. We're starting to trend down a little bit. Just a little bit about the program. First of all, we got a new version out. The latest version has one of the important features that just got done was you can see here all the weeklies are now showing up in OptionVue, and in the definitions we can actually see them and update them under the weeklies tab. Whereas I got this 7.20 loaded, and we can go out and actually change the strikes for each expiration, weekly expiration. And that'll be true in BackTrader as well. So that's an important, because previously it was only showing 2, and you could only modify 2 expirations if all the strikes weren't there. So that is a very nice addition. And that's true for the leaps as well. So we could go out in some assets, the leaps are showing 4 or 5 different expirations for the indexes and some of the bigger stocks. So you'll see all those now available under your Define tab, and also in BackTrader that's going to be available. So before we get started, let me just give the usual disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only, should not be construed as personalized financial advice. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. I'm going to show you some results here, so that's the reason for the disclaimer. So we'll start out by showing you how you open BackTrader, and that is it is a standalone with the program. You can own BackTrader and use it as a data source. If you own OptionVue or lease OptionVue, one of the ways to get data into it is using BackTrader. So you could actually, the way the program is set up now, you could not even enter BackTrader if you had your data source turned to none and we're just using BackTrader for data. You could open a matrix without even entering BackTrader. It's just going to give you the latest available data. So it'll just pull up a matrix and you'll see 30 to 60 minute delayed data without having to actually enter BackTrader. So it won't allow you to reverse time in this mode if you're just in normal mode and you have BackTrader data and no real-time data. You can see a matrix like this, but it'll be 30 to 60 minute delayed. So that way you can always see all your option data. One of the nice things about having BackTrader as your data source is you don't actually have to pay for the exchange fees. The futures exchange fees that are very expensive, $75 a pop, usually over 5 or 6 different exchanges, can add up to about $300, $350 a month for real-time futures data. And if you're using BackTrader delayed data, 30 to 60 minutes delayed during market hours, there's no exchange fees. And you will get access to all that futures data. So those are a couple of important points about BackTrader before we get started. But this is the way you would normally And the way I like to use BackTrader, I don't use it as a data source typically unless we're having problems. You would just click Net View, BackTrader, and there's your BackTrader initiation box. And you're going to have a choice here, and this is important actually, because if you're only using BackTrader, if you're in the situation where you own the program, you have BackTrader, and the way BackTrader functions, you will not get a copy of your work in the matrix saved. It's defaulting to store to temporary files. It opens a temporary folder up. So any changes you make to a matrix or any information you put in the trade column, anything basically that you alter in the matrix would not be saved. So if you wish to save anything, you're going to have to click on this one, Store to Existing Asset Files. I'm not going to do it because I'd be overwriting my asset files. But that would be the best idea if you're running BackTrader for data and you don't have a real-time data. You want to click on the Store to Existing Asset Files so you actually create an asset file on your C drive or wherever you're running the program. So you can actually use that to store information so that you can save your matrix formats and so on, or any trade data that you put in the trade column. So we can just pick a date here, any date. It goes all the way back to 2000, actually, just a wealth of data there. Not for every asset. Some assets weren't trading back then, or there might be a different symbol. Like in the case of futures, wheat had a different symbol back before the electronic trading started, so you wouldn't get electronic wheat before 2009, I believe, 2008 at the earliest. So some symbols won't have data, but for what data there is available in 2001, it's there. For the major symbols, you're going to get data all the way back to 2001. So we can just pick a date here, and there's a couple of hotkeys I want to show you next as far as altering the date. When we pick the date, we can either type a date in here. I could just use the buttons here on the, this is back 1 day, back a half an hour. This would be forward half an hour, and forward 1 full day. Now I can move the date that way. That's kind of slow. One click at a time. Let's say I don't want to do that. I want to go back a full year. You could just type the date in that you want, or you can highlight it. And there's a hotkey on the keyboard where you can hold the Shift key down and use the less than sign, and it's going to go back a full year. That's one way to do it. If you want to go back just 1 day at a time and not use the mouse, you can actually do that on the keyboard using the bracket key just to the right of P on your keyboard, on your Windows keyboard. There's a bracket left and right bracket key. So the left bracket key will take you backward 1 day, right bracket key forward 1 day. If you hold it down, it's going to actually start scrolling backward in rapid fashion. Forward, right bracket key, if you hold it, it will start scrolling forward. So those are a couple of ways. And you can actually scroll by month or move by month. If you hold the Shift key down and use the left bracket key, it's going to go back by a full month now instead of 1 day. And if you hold it down, it'll start scrolling backward by months. So you can quickly cover some ground there as far as if you don't like clicking and typing in dates, you want to use your keyboard, a lot of people do, then that's how you do it. It's a Shift key and then the right and left bracket key and the right and the greater than and less than sign. So you can go by day, month, or year. So if I wanted to start up on that date, I could go ahead and click Start now. And usually it's a good idea to, when you're starting in BackTrading, you want to run a test, actually put it on the close for the day. So you could put it on the market closer a half hour afterwards. Actually, the final settlement for index options is after the market close it. So that's why we have it set at 1530 here. So I'm going to go ahead and start it now. We're entering BackTrader. So in essence, everything is going to look as it did on this date, July 20th, 2010. I just picked a random date here. We're going to go to a different date in a minute. But you see there was only one weekly available back then. We've expanded quite a bit since then, of course. So that's the price of Google on that date. And if we open up a price chart, it's going to be as it was back then. You're just looking at that. The last bar here is that date, July 20th, 2010. You're not going to be able to see anything forward to that. So if you're back testing, that's kind of a nice feature. You can't cheat. I mean, assuming you didn't know what happened, you could actually fake it and be more realistic in your trading. And if you can just wipe out, sort of pretend you didn't know what happened, you just want to look at the trend and see how you would have played it. I like to do that. If I don't recall exactly how it went, the test becomes more realistic then because you're just playing what it looks like as if you were trading then, which is kind of fun. That way you're actually experiencing a more realistic trading, back testing experience. So we can draw in trend lines or anything that we could normally do. And all of the buttons in the program are going to actually be as of that date. We can put up the Volpe chart, volatility, the implied volatility is the blue line, brown line is the statistical volatility. With the exception that we can even use Trade Finder, Survey, OpScan is the exception. That's the one exception that does not work in BackTrader mode. It's real-time only for OpScan. But everything else is going to have a look just as if you were in that date. So when you're starting out a test, assume we wanted to, and if you listen to my last OptionVue Essentials, we talked about a butterfly test on Google. And I created a set of parameters or trading rules for the test. So when you start it up, you want to create an account with the same name. So this is a good idea because you can actually waste a lot of time and research if you went through a test and a couple of months later you go back and you might still have all the information saved in your transaction log. You can see here the trades that I've already saved on this particular test. But if 3 months later you went back and tried to figure out what exactly were you doing here, what rules were you using and so on, you may have a hard time reconstructing it. So the best idea is to actually create a document where you, and there's no place, there is a notes field available in certain windows on OptionVue, but I just prefer to put it in a Word document. And here was the original rules that I had set up for that test. So we're just creating profit target, what the asset is, slippage and commissions. We're putting slippage to none. Hold on just a sec. And here are all the rules. So if you have not done this for a while, you can quickly go back and get back in step and carry on with the test. And then you could just, what I have done here is actually created another document with the exact same rules, and I called it Butterfly Test Number 2, and I could just change some of these rules without having to retype everything. And then we'd have to create a new account to match that same name if we want to do another test. Back to, I can just open the drop down here or use the Info tab. If you haven't already got an account, then you do want to create one, because without an account to record your transactions, nothing will be saved in BackTrader. Anything you put in the trade column will not generate a profit or loss as you're moving forward or back in time. There's going to be no profit or loss and no record of account value either. So you won't get a performance result. So the first step is to go into BackTrader, create a new account. In this case, I'm going to start up with my second test. Assuming that this one didn't work out the way we wanted, we're going to create a new account now to compare results with some new rules. So I'm going to call it Google Butterfly 2. And it's not a track data or super account, so we just click OK. And we're going to put in, I believe I had put in 20,000 to start with here. You can put any amount in there. So now it's started. It's going to fill in this information the same way you had your previous account configured. Usually just put zeros in here for interest rate, pretty close anyway. Valuation, I take out slippage. I just don't want that variable in there, and the reason is because slippage can actually put you well below 0 when you're starting out, and it looks discouraging, frankly. So you want to just take slippage out, and you can always add in slippage at the end of a test. Just take out a certain percentage that you feel would be appropriate for whatever trading style you have, 3 to 5%. Say if you're making 20% per year on a strategy with 0 slippage, you might take out 3 to 5%. I think it's a conservative look at the end of it. That's a better way to go about it, I think, rather than including slippage. You can use the slippage, and if you do, I recommend putting it on small. You really don't need more than that. Because from my experience as a trader, you're always putting it in at the mid price, and you're looking for a fill somewhere near there, which usually if you're trading with any degree of regularity, you're going to get pretty good at filling near the mid price. So I like to just put in no slippage. Commissions you can check, and you can change your commission schedule. It's going to be defaulted if you've never set this up before. You're going to have $14.95. I haven't altered this one for the number of shares because I don't trade stocks, just options. Over here, though, if you haven't altered this at all, it's going to say $14.95 under transaction minimum. You're going to have a large. So if you're doing a test where you're just doing small lots, that could have a detrimental effect on your results. A $14.95 per option minimum. So what I've done is just put in $1 per contract, no base fee, no minimum, which is pretty typical for the discount brokers like Thinkorswim, which I'm using. So when you're set with that, just go ahead and click OK. Oh, by the way, the base fee would be something you would add your per option charge to. So if you had a $9.95 base fee, that would mean that if you traded 2 contracts, then you would add $2 to that base fee. But the minimum would be the same charge up to the time when your per option charge exceeded the minimum. So you'd have to trade 10 contracts then if you had a $9.95 minimum before you would exceed that minimum. It would always be $9.95 till then. And you can flip it to a breakover for price or number of contracts if that's available from your broker. So we're going to close this. Now we're ready to go here. The other important one is the gain loss to include previously realized gain losses. Check that box, and we're ready to go. We can connect to various brokerages. Track Data is one. Options Express, we have a way to send information from the matrix to their trade platform. And you can see here Trade Monster, under construction, not yet fully operational. So look for that in the future. But if you don't have any brokerage that you're linked to at the moment, then just leave that unchecked. So here we go. Okay, so we got our account set up. Now, one important point when you're in BackTrader is status is what records all the information, the account value as you're progressing in time. So we're starting with 20,000. If I open up status, you'll see that amount there in the account name. And you will see any open positions that you have. Status actually just shows it should just show your open positions. So anything that's been closed out already is not supposed to be in here. So once we get a position in, and I'm going to go to a date where there was a trade. We'll put it at 11/20. In this account, there's no trades, but I switch it back to this account. 10/26, 11/1. I'm looking for a date where there was a trade here. Okay. And whenever you're using BackTrader and you let it go for 2 seconds without clicking on either the S's or D buttons, you will activate the BackTrader mode. It'll start changing. Up till 2 seconds, you can alter it. See if I click the forward S, then backward S. I can do that again within 2 seconds. That's why I prefer to leave it on delayed updates. If you put it on immediate updates, as soon as you click, it'll execute and start moving. And then you have to wait till this please wait box, and it tells you the duration there goes away before you can see anything. So now you can see the position. If I wanted to just see the long option, I can double click. If you had a bunch of positions in here, I could just double click and get that position to show up in the matrix, that position only. So that's a nice feature using status. If I wanted to see one particular option in there, I didn't want to see the entire butterfly, I can just click on by expiration. It'll break it down by individual option. So I just wanted to look at the long, one of the longs here. That's the in the money long. I could analyze just that, or see the Greeks, for example, for just that side of the trade. Now if you open the transaction log again, click OK, your full position will come back. All right, so now we're set up. I'm not going to continue on with the first test I was doing last time, and I'll show you why. I'm going to go to the last date here, 11/7. Let's use the, and I'll show you why in a minute here, because I'm going to pull up the performance graph. So it's important to realize that the performance graph is only going to show you whatever history you have in your price chart here in your equity curve until that date. So you can see it's only showing me till November 7th. I started on September 27th, and I ended on November 7th. So if there was any data beyond that, it wouldn't show up here because I'm in that date in BackTrader. But you can see why this test is, it started out great, and we had some trouble in the last couple of tries at this on the weekly butterfly because of earnings. The stock had run down. Take a look at the price chart here for a moment. So we had a big gap down in earnings, and it just chopped around and continued to head lower. So a couple of things happened as a result of that. The 10-point wide butterfly that I was using actually didn't produce a very good return after a couple or 3 days, which is what we're looking for, trying to get out before expiration. The reason is because the volatility had jumped up and it wasn't producing much of a variance, leaving you exposed as the market would start to move without any real benefit as time was going by. So you weren't realizing much in terms of time decay benefit, but you had all the exposure of a move against you directionally. So, and the other thing about weekly butterflies that I was finding out from this test is that if you are in a profit zone and you do get a move like this, even this bar here doesn't look that horrible, but when I was testing this, within a half an hour it jumped down to the point where instead of being profitable, it was at quite a loss. So it's a dangerous situation with these butterflies. So back to the price chart, the performance graph rather. So you can see by looking at this, and this is the whole purpose of backtesting from my point of view. We want to see, first of all, is it profitable over a period of time in the various different markets? And secondly, is the drawdown something that you can live with? So you can see here we have a 19% peak So it's a peak to drawdown would be the peak to trough, the highest yield, down to the lowest point on the chart. In this case, it would be about 18 to -2. So about a 20% drawdown versus we're 2% negative right now on the whole test. So at this point, if that was not within your risk tolerance, shall we say, then you just want to start a new test and see if different rules would make a better result over the same time period. So that's what we can do right now. So we started a new account. We'll go to that one. And we're going to go back to that same date on September 27th. I'll just use the hotkey and scroll back. Left bracket key. So there it is. We're going to start up. And it hasn't finished yet. Okay, so there's where we were. Make sure I got the right starting date here. Yeah, that was the earliest trade, September 27th, from that test. So in order of sequence here, you want to start up BackTrader, create an account using info if you don't already have one, and then open up status. And the way you can make sure status is open is by clicking on window. That shows you all your open windows here under the second part of this drop down. You can see my status is open. And then finally set up a performance graph. And you just want to put the right date in there, starting date of September 27th, showing the correct amount. So if you started this account in the present, put $20,000 in there, when you went back to this date, you would actually have 0 here for starting value. If you have that situation, you could either restart the account, and you can do that quickly just by closing out any account that you don't need. So you can generate any number of accounts, actually. You could generate 1,000 of these accounts. The problem is the drop-down is going to be a bit cumbersome to find what you need. So if you find you've created too many accounts and you want to get rid of some that you're not using, easy step. Just click this account is closed, delete account. So I'm going to go back to this, the second one here. So now we're all set. We're going to go back to our matrix, keeping status open. And you can get to it from the Window tab. We can navigate to all of our open windows using the Window tab here. Window, Matrix. And we're going to put in, we're going to change the rules around just a little bit, so that's the next step. We got our open. So what I was finding was perhaps a 10-point wide butterfly was not going to work. It was just too easy to go outside the profit zone. So we'll try it with a 20-point wide and see if that will work any better. And we're going to set the stop loss. And what I was finding was even if you set the stop loss at 20%, we were still sometimes going beyond that, even using the half-hour advance in BackTrader to get it to a fine-tune your stop. It's hard to hit that 20% exactly if you're going, if it gaps overnight on you. In one case, it went from profitability to the next morning it was down 60%. There was nothing in between, so you're forced to take the 60% loss. So what I'm going to do is change this to set stop at the expiration break even for the butterfly as an alternate rule. And I'm going to set my profit target just a little bit higher because or actually a little bit lower because we're going wider. We're going to have a higher cost of capital, and we're going to stop it ourselves out with a potentially lower loss. So we want to cut this down. We'll shoot for 30%. Give ourselves a reasonable chance of getting out with a profit. And I had had a directional bias. If it was clearly trending up or down, then we would put it 10 points in that direction. If it was bullish, we'd go 10 points in that direction. So we'll continue with that rule for now. And if it was not clear from the price chart whether it was bullish or bearish, then just put it at the money. We'll keep that rule in place. So now we'll go ahead and save this. We've got a second rule, set of rules here. And now we're ready to start test number 2. If we didn't like the results, so there's no point in running through a year of testing in which you already realized from the 20% drawdown, if that was too much of a drawdown for you, there's no point in continuing the test. You wouldn't use that strategy. So we can just start a new one and run it through and see if that would exceed the results of the first one. And so that performance graph that we created with the proper amount, starting amount to give you the yield on the whole account, return on equity, is crucial to backtesting and to having a valuable set of data out of your backtesting and not just coming up with an end result. That is just a one piece of the information that you get from backtesting. So you want to have that performance graph. All right, so we're going to use an at-the-money butterfly on the weekly with 1 week to expiration or more. That's the rule. So we're starting in bull mode here. We'll assume it's bullish. We're going to continue up. We're going to put it at a 770 strike. So here we go with the 770 butterfly. And I want to use up about 20% of my account allocation. So whatever that would be, I'll start out with a 20 lot and see what that would do. We're going to go 20 points wide instead of what I was doing before. Let's see here. We're at 756. We're going to go up to 765 then as our center strike, 10 points higher. I want to go 20 points wide for the longs. So we can analyze before we convert it. Wait a minute. What do we do here? We're going to start out with 40 in the middle. There's our butterfly. And we're positioning it bullishly if it goes up. And we can see, and I always like to put it on the maximum number of timelines. It's defaulted to 3, but the whole objective here is not to wait to expiration. The chances of it hitting that price exactly and getting the maximum yield are very small. We want to grab the yield somewhere below that. So we want to put it up to the maximum number of timelines to see where you could get your return that you're looking for. So if we're targeting 30%, you can see here in 5 days, that would be a perfect exit. If it was anywhere between, then I would just click and drag the little slide rule at the bottom here. You can see down below, when I left click and drag it, you can see all the results in the green box below the yield and all the Greeks. So I can see from a price of 755, I make a 30% return in 5 days because I'm clicked on that timeline on the legend here. You can also change timelines by clicking right on the graph itself. So I just want to make sure before I put the trade in that I can actually hit my target within a reasonable range of prices. So I can start here 30% at that price all the way up to about 7. So I got a decent range of price here, where about 15 points, maybe a little less, where I could hit my target in 5 days. So that is reasonable. So we're going to go ahead and convert the trade. And so here we go. And then you also want to check how much you're using. In this case, I started with 20,000, and I wanted to use only about 20% of it because there is a possibility at gaps you could lose the entire amount. So you'd be wiped out. So we want to cut that down to where it was only using about 4,000. So I'll just do a little bit of quick math here. We'll use 12. 6 for the longs. So that gives me about 4,000. That's what I'm after. I'm going to use about 20% of the account. I'm going to convert it over. That puts it in the existing position column. If you set your matrix format up in this fashion, then you can see quickly what your existing position is, any Greeks that you want to see, any other column parameters. I like to put it in a wider. It's defaulted to just a 1 by 3, but I like to make it into a 1 by 6 and show more data. And if you have the widescreen computer monitor, you can still fit plenty of expiration series in there. So here we go. We're going to start up advancing 1 day at a time at first at the close or just beyond the half hour after. And I'll advance 1 day at a time. You can watch the results down below. Now, a couple of points. You're going to see it takes 7 seconds for this to update. There's a couple of tricks that you can do to get it to speed up a little bit. First would be to close out your quotes display, because every time you update every single, you can see I got a lot of tabs here, a lot of symbols. I could actually close out the quotes display and still keep the matrix open so it doesn't have to update all those symbols. I want to keep status open. And I can keep the price chart open, but I don't need the quotes display to update every time I advance. So we'll see if, in this case, you can see just down here, it minimized it. There it is. That's a little tricky. So take note. If you can't then open your matrix, it's minimized in the lower left. Not sure why it does that, but anyway, that's where it goes. So now we've got all our, you can see in status, we have a profit of $192. And back to the matrix. If you want to navigate back to the matrix, don't close out status, easy to do. You just close it out here, and then you get no record of your account value as you're advancing. So you can see now if I look at my performance graph, I got a 1 day record. Now if you just got the idea, I just want to speed this up, I'll just advance to the 5 day period and see what it looks like then and either close out the trade or you wouldn't actually get data on these dates in between. It would just be a straight line from the 27th to 5 days forward with no data in between. It's just drawing a straight line from where you started to where you advance next. That eliminates a lot of the value of doing this performance graph, which is you want to know all the peaks and the troughs. You want to know the maximum drawdown. So for that, I would suggest that you always advance 1 day at a time, or maybe 2 at the most if you're doing a longer term test on 3-month options where you don't need to see it every day. But for weeklies, certainly you want to see every day because things can change pretty rapidly. So that's important. So now if I wanted to get back to my matrix, just open the window, click matrix, there I am back again. So now I'll advance 1 more day. And you can see it updated quicker that time. It didn't take nearly as long. One other trick would be if you're not using, see I've got a lot of things going on here all the way out to leap options. We could actually go in and to define and take out the leaps, apply. That would be less symbols for it to update as well as you're advancing. So we'll continue on now. 1 more day. And so what we could do here, if we want to, instead of clicking on Analyze, we want to get to the existing position. There we go, sorry. If you click on T, it's just going to show you down in the summary below only trades. Since there were no trades, we're just showing 0. If you click on B, it'll show you both a proposed trade or an adjustment and your existing position. If you click on the E for existing, it'll show you your current position. So if we wanted to find out what our yield is based on, I mean, you can quickly see it's about 25%, but if you want to see exactly, just go to the Analyze screen, put your cursor on the black dot, and hold it there for a moment. And there you can see 27%. So now that I'm close to my target, all I need is 30% now to get out of this trade. So I'm either going to have a 30% winner, or if it just drops a few points here, you can see I'm going to have to get out because it's going to hit the expiration break even. So I want to start advancing 1/2 hour at a time. I could minimize the graph. Let's go back to the matrix for a moment. If you first of all, start by restoring down the matrix. I'll show you a way that you can speed this up a little bit. Instead of flipping back and forth, we can leave this in resized form, restored down. So there's my matrix. I've got the price chart over here on the right, and I could actually open the side-by-side. There is a feature in OptionVue where you can view an interactive graph, which will update as you're advancing rather than having to click Analyze each time. There it would be. Now I've resized this already, so if the first time you open it, it may not be sized correctly. You can size it any way you want. But now I've got all 3 windows that I need open. If I wanted to see this a little bit clearer, I can use the feature of using the arrows on the bottom. And now if you just left click and hold, not up here, this will move the wand, but down below where the prices are, you can actually move in or out in the graph, zoom in or out. So to the right, zooms in, to the left, zooms out. So I want to zoom in a little bit, click and drag to the right, zooms it in, and now I can see clearly where I want to be. So I want to advance 1/2 hour at a time here, and I can track the price chart on the right, the trade equity on the centric, and here's your matrix position with the gain loss right there. So now I can see the next morning I've already actually got my profit 37%. So we couldn't hit the 30% exactly. That's the best we can do. So we'll go ahead and close that out. We hit our profit target. So I'm going to go ahead and put a countering trade in here to close this out. So I buy 12. So you just enter the opposite transaction in your trade column. And then convert, and it will disappear. The position will disappear. And so will the analyzed graph until you put a new position in. So now we'll check out our report and see where we are at as far as a performance graph. So there it was. As we advanced every day, that was our results. We ended up with a 7.5% return on equity, or the entire account of $20,000, where we made 37%. If you made a note of that as we were closing out, we hit the 37% return on invested capital, or return on the trade. So you're watching all these things, and if you set it up this way, it works out pretty nicely. So now we're just going to go ahead and check the price chart again to determine it's already open. We're going to look at still a bullish, starting to top out here. So if we're not sure if it's going to carry on or if it's going to reverse at this point, we'll just put it on at the money. So I'm looking at 760 as my center strike. And again, I'll just take a shot in the dark here at position size. We had a 12 lot last time. We're going to go 14. I always use multiples of 2. It's a little easier. There is one school of thought on butterflies where you can take half off if it hits a certain yield, and then another half, which I like to do if it hits a further yield target. So I like to do them in multiples of 2. So we'll do 14 and 7 for this one. See if that hits our, we got a little bit more capital than before. We're going to use 20% of the account, minus 14 here. Again, I'm on existing, so that's why it's not showing down below. So we're at, let's clear that one out. If you didn't like what that looked like, just clear the trade out. We don't actually have a weekly that we can use. We got 17 days in the October, and we have a weekly with 3 days left. So what I'll do is just advance to the next day here. By the way, if I use this pencil eraser, you can clear out everything, which I don't suggest, but if you just want to clear out any trades you've entered, that's the quick way to do it rather than deleting them individually. Pencil eraser, clear. So now we've got the weekly 9 that we're after. You can enter any time during the day, but if you're advancing through, then go back to the close so you can see the full range of price during the day. That will tell you if you would have hit your stop, and it will give you the full range of price. Just easier to, and on the full range of price bar on the chart, the price chart as well. So here we go now. So we're going to put in the 14 lot, sell 14 in the center. 7 here, 7 here. There's the graph. Let's see, could we hit the, yeah, we can hit 30%, but it's a little tougher. We'll go ahead with it anyway. We'll open the side by side, so we're ready to go. Convert the trade, and here we go. Oh. There we go. Advance to the end of the day, and advance 1 day. Zoom in a little bit. So we can see here already in 1 day we're up 16%. We'll go 1 more day. Still up, starting to reverse a little bit. 16%. 1 more day. And the rule in this particular test was if I got to the Thursday before expiration, we just close it out. We don't play expiration day. So you can see here we surpassed our stop. So what we would do is just back it up a day. And that's an important point, actually, that I want to discuss. Because a number of clients have called with this question. Why would your Greeks be different if you advanced to a certain date and then move forward a couple of days or a week and then backed up to the exact same date with the exact same matrix, and your Greeks could be different? Well, the reason is because you've actually got the variable volatility model creating values for the Greeks and for your option prices on the graphical analysis. That variable volatility model is affected by the current data that you have in your matrix. So when you're creating that, you're essentially creating that each time you advance a day. So if you start skipping around, it's using data that's not exactly the same as where you were before. It's only using the previous day's data. That's what it's defaulted to. We can see that under the Model tab, Volatility and Settings. There is the use the most recent days. We could change it to up to 3 days, but with the way volatility moves around lately, you might get some mispriced implied volatilities if you do that. So I would suggest just keep leaving on the default, which is the recent 1 day. Point is that you're affecting the way the Greeks are calculated using that variable volatility model if you're just bouncing around haphazardly from one date to the next. So if you did have a date in mind, it would be a good idea to start a day before or two, advance to that date, and to get the data from that time in your variable volatility model, and your Greeks should be accurate if you're using a Greek trigger for your trades. That would be important. All right, so now I got a situation where I'm going to hit my stop here. I never got to my profit target at 30%, but I want to make sure that I don't take the, I may not be able to get out. It looks like I will be able to. Sometimes it just gaps down, and that's the problem with these weeklies. So now we're just about to hit it. So I'm going by the 1/2 hour advance, which is the forward S, to see where I can hit my expiration break even, hopefully get out for virtually no loss. That's the revised rules. I would just want to capture a 30% gain when I can and close it out at the expiration break even. There's a better set of rules, and we're going to hopefully prove that that will work better. So now you can see it's I can't get out exactly at where I wanted to, but that's the best we can do. So we're either at a profit or we hit the stop. So we're going to have to close it out there. So there's our countering transaction. Convert that. It's gone. Back to the performance graph. So you can see now we ended up pretty much back to break even. So it's a tough game, but hopefully it proves the usefulness of BackTrader in creating a strategy. I'm not saying this is a good strategy. It's just that for demonstration purposes, you get the point. But that graph then, if you compare it to the previous graph, is what we want to do. Back to the performance graph there. You can see how that one was doing. In that case, we actually came out with a little bit better result. But over the period of a couple of trades doesn't make any difference. But you just carry that forward then for 3 months or whatever the period was and compare those performance graphs one to another. That would tell you which strategy, which rules, set of rules you'd rather be using. All right, I see we're coming up to about 50 minutes, and hopefully I haven't bored you out of your mind with all this. But that's my take on how to use BackTrader efficiently to create a strategy or backtest any strategy. And hopefully you've gotten some good ideas from what I've showed you. So I'm going to get out of the desktop sharing here just for a moment. Somebody asked, Leon asks, what is backtesting? How could we do it with Thinkorswim? They have Thinkorswim has a feature called ThinkBack. They actually don't have as much data as we have available in OptionVue. I'm not sure if it's what time frame it's using. I believe it's just end of day data. You can backtest in ThinkBack. BackTrader, though, is not that expensive of a feature if you're using OptionVue. You can talk to your product rep about that. That's all I see here. All right, thanks to everyone for attending, and I'll talk to you again. I just want to keep going with because there's so much to do on BackTrader, and I've spent countless hours at it. And the more time you spend with it, I think the more user-friendly it becomes. It is a bit of a learning curve, as you can see, but it's well worth it. And you can actually, there's numerous stories of traders who've gotten to great success using BackTrader. And it does take some work, no lying there, but this is how you do it. Just put in the time and be systematic. All right, hope you come back and join me again for the next one. I'll be talking again about BackTrader for the next OptionVue Essentials I'll be doing. Till then. Thanks again for attending.